Barricade. Seems I can't get enough of them lately, so today I'm building 40k terrain and I'm making some sandbag barricades. Welcome back, great to have you here. If this is your first time here, welcome. And here's what's up. If you want to improve your wargaming, make your tabletop battles more epic, and give your wargaming budget more power, then just smash the subscribe button and ding the bell. That way, you won't miss anything. Now let's check out what you need to make this piece of terrain. Okay, so here's all the things you're gonna need to make this piece of terrain. First of all, you want some 3mm MDF to use as your base. You're gonna want some air drying clay that you're gonna make your sandbags out of. You're going to want some knives and stuff to cut all of the stuff out with. You're gonna want some brushes to paint and color stuff with. You're gonna want some black spray paint to base coat, some light brown paint to give you a base color. You're gonna want some bleached bone and some dark shade. I have some Nuln oil just to color in and make our sandbags look like sandbags. And then finally, you're gonna want some sand or flock or something to texture the base of your terrain, and then you seal it all down using your water and PVA mix. Okay, so our first step for our sandbag wall is to cut out a small base that it's going to be on so that we know roughly how much clay we need to use. So as usual, take our knife and we're just going to mark out a small section of MDF, about, let's make it that long. Let's give it a nice square corner, score along that line, trying to get it to go along that line if you can. Score along that line with your knife until it cuts through. And you get your piece of MDF, then as usual, you just get your knife and you bevel off the edges and you'll be left with a nice base like that we're gonna put our sandbags on. So now let's actually make the sandbags to go on this base. Okay, now that we've got our base, we wanna make some sandbags. So we're gonna take our air drying clay and we're just gonna grab a whole bunch of it. And I recommend not having any rings on your fingers when you do this because it will gum them up horribly and it feels awful. So basically with your air drying clay, you want to just take a bit of it and roll it out into a little sausage that is a little bit thinner than the thickness of your final sandbag. I suppose that's a way to express it. I'll show you in a moment exactly what I mean. But the most important thing here is that it is a uniform thickness all the way along. So you end up with something like this. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our fingers and we're just going to smush it down a little bit so that it is now less of a cylinder and more of a bar, like a flat bar. You want to try to get the ends to be relatively squared. And you want it to be about the thickness this way that you want your sandbags to be. So this would be when it's sitting flat. And then we take a brush or a stick or something. And because the clay is nice and soft, we can just press it in. And you find about the length you want your sandbag to be. And you press it down all the way. Then you pull your bag off. Pull your piece of clay off. And you make it a bit squarer. Try to eliminate any cracks that are too nasty. And at the ends, you want to just take it and pinch it so that it forms what would effectively be the seam of the bag. And there you have your little sandbag. So you just take your base and you plop it onto your base like so. Try to get it to stick down a little bit. Press it, and then you go to all the corners and you pull it down like gravity's pulling the bag down like so. Then you just repeat the process with another one. You cut it off about the same length. You pinch the ends into a nice seam, well, where the end of the bag would be stitched up. And once you've done that, you pop it down with a little bit of overlap onto the next one, and you pull down its corners. And we just kind of repeat this for, this one's probably only going to have one more on it. Not a very big base. Probably should have made this one a little bit bigger. I'm going to give this one a bit of a curve just so I can fit more on the base easily. And for this one, you also just curve down like that. Then we're going to layer them up, putting them offset a little bit for 3 layers, gives a good height from what I've experimented with. like so, and you'll have it offset a little bit so that it kind of overlaps is what we want. When you've done your last bag, you just sit it on top like so, pat it down, and you do the exact same thing you've done with the rest of them, just to get it looking like gravity's pulling them all down, and you'll end up with a sandbag wall, something like that. Now all you have to do is leave it overnight to dry in a warm, dry place, and it will be ready for base coating and painting, which is gonna be awesome. Bam! So now the clay has all dried, and I have base coated them using a spray can. As you can see, they've come out a bit grayer just because the clay does soak in some of the spray paint, but that's okay because we're going to put quite a few layers of paint over the top of this. If yours have not stuck together quite as well as if yours have not stuck together like this while they've been drying, and they definitely won't stick down to the base. So what we're going to do to remedy this is we're going to take some PVA, we're going to shake it up, and we are going to apply a very, very conservative amount to the base, and then stick that down. Then we're going to apply a little bit to the other spot that's come apart, like so, and stick that down. And that will stick it all nicely back together. Then once that's dried, we can start applying a few more layers of paint. Okay, so once we've got it all stuck back together, we're going to grab some brown. This is just that same brown I got from the hardware store. And you just grab a brush like so, get some of it, and just start layering it on. And in my case, because I want a black base for my sand to go over, I'm going to try to be as careful as I can when I'm towards the bottom of it, because I want to try to avoid getting brown paint on the bottom if possible. If I get a bit down there, it's not a huge deal, but I'd like to avoid it where possible. And then you'll have something like that. So now you just need to let that paint dry, then we'll add the next layer. It will dry quite quickly because the air drying clay just wants to soak up all the moisture it can get, so it dries nice and fast. Okay, so once the brown coat has dried, we're going to get some bleached bone, or whatever Games Workshop's calling it now. And we're just going to grab a bit of that, put some down here. And we want to apply this one a bit thinner than we put the brown on. So just like that will do the trick. No need to water it down, really. And you just brush it over the top. And then once that coat dries, we're going to apply another one, and then we have one last color to apply. Bam! And all of the bleached bone is now applied, and they're starting to look like sandbags, but they're not quite there yet. Now we're going to add some Nuln Shade into the recesses just to darken down the bits that, well, should be dark. We're not going to wash over the entire thing, we just want to get into the recesses in, say, here, just in there to put a little shadow down there. And you want to try to avoid having it run down too far because you don't want it dark right down there, and you really only want them on the lower bit because if the sun is up above shining light down, the shadows are going to be cast down, not up. Run it along there, trying to do it as neatly as possible, unlike how I do it. You also want to apply some underneath the sandbags at the end here, where they haven't quite flopped down, because you will have a shadow under there as well. And to base it, as per usual, we just take our PVA and apply it around the entire thing, spread it out with our glue brush, and like with all terrain that sits on the ground, having a bit of glue go up the edge is not a big deal because we want it to look like the wind has blown a bit of the sand up there. If you were using grass or something, you might not want this as much because obviously grass is stuck to the ground a lot firmer than sand is. So once you've got your glue all spread out, so we just take our sand like so, sprinkle it over, and you just pick it up and shake the excess off. And you're left with a cool little sandbag barricade like this. Now obviously you can add a lot more texture to the clay before it sets and it'll look even better. And the last thing that you need to do before you use it is once the glue holding the sand down is set, you just take your PVA water mix in your spray bottle and you just squirt down the whole thing, making it nice and wet. And wait for that to dry, and that way none of your sand will come off and make a mess everywhere. So there you go, that's how you can make yourself a nice and easy sandbag barricade that's quick to make and looks fantastic on the battlefield, provided that you look at it from about 2 meters back. No, but seriously, it does the effect that we want it to do, and you could put a lot more detail into this if you wanted to, and provided you had time, but the purpose of this was something you can knock out really quickly, and you can make heaps of these fairly quickly and easily. And to help you prevent these sandbags from coming apart while they're drying, if you press them down a little bit more while they're still wet, they will stick together better, but regardless of how much you press them down, it's unlikely that they will stick to the MDF when they're dry, so you are still going to have to glue that bit back together. But because the PVA is water-based and the air drying clay wants to soak up all the moisture it can get its hands on, it's going to dry quite quickly, which is really convenient if you're in a hurry. And of course, huge thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up so that we know that you like it, so that we can keep making stuff that you like. And if you don't like it, you should chuck a comment below telling me why, so that I can fix it in the future / just I'm kidding, I don't feel bad about anything. And as usual, if you want to improve your wargaming, make your tabletop battles more epic, and give your wargaming budget more power, just smash the crosshair and ding the bell. You'll subscribe and I'll be able to share with you more battle reports, terrain tutorials, and strategies to make your wargaming experience more epic. And I'll see you next time.